Hello. This is a reminder that as well as listening to this show on a browser via the Creative Life Story Work website, you can also listen to it on your favourite audio app too. You'll find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, and many others. Search Creative Life Story Work Podcast.
Welcome to the Creative Life Story Work Podcast, where we explore how to make life story work better for all care-experienced children and young people. Creative life story work is an approach which can improve children and young people's lives and their relationships with others, both at home and at school. It's based on the Rose model of therapeutic life story work. Every month, we'll explore a different aspect of creative life story work, and we'll give insights into how you can use this approach to help care-experienced children and young people make sense of their past and build a brighter future. Today, we're going on a very special kind of bear hunt, one that helps us think, feel and do in powerful new ways. And we're joined by the brilliant minds behind the Think, Feel, Do sensory bears, Karen Vance and Amy Payne. Karen has been a dedicated therapeutic life story work practitioner since 2017, bringing her expertise to both government and not-for-profit sectors. She's currently working with Settlement Services International in their multicultural foster care programme. Karen is exploring innovative ways to adapt therapeutic life story work for culturally diverse communities, ensuring this transformative work reaches those who need it most. Amy Payne is a psychologist with over 20 years of experience specialising in trauma. She's the co-founder of Think, Feel, Do Sensory Bears and co-creator of the Therapeutic Life Story Work Practice Pocket Cards. Amy blends creativity with practice, and as an EMDR therapist trained in relational integrative EMDR and a dyadic development psychotherapy practitioner, Amy integrates holistic trauma-informed methods into their work. A very warm welcome into the podcast studio, Amy and Karen. Lovely to see you both.
You too, thank you.
Lovely to meet you, Dawn.
Lovely to see you all the way in Australia, in the Blue Mountains. I won't burst into song, don't worry. I might. I
hope you do, Dawn. I hope you do.
I wondered if you could take us right back to the beginning of the story and tell us about the first spark of inspiration for the Think, Feel, Do Sensory Bears.
Well, I guess I might step in there. So Amy and I, we've known one another since 2016 or 17, about then, when Amy was my manager. And we were both working for the government here in New South Wales. We both studied with Richard the diploma in therapeutic life story work. And around that time, I was working with a young woman in residential care and had started to do the work with her. And she was very shut down in many ways and struggled to identify any emotions in herself. When I asked her, to talk about emotions, she would say she knew about feeling happy, she knew about feeling frustrated, and she knew about feeling very frustrated. And when we would talk, often she would just go blank and stop talking. And so I talked to Amy about how we could explore emotions with her, explore understanding herself a little bit more. And Amy had recently the year before, been to the Australian Childhood Trauma Conference, which I should remember is also the International Childhood Trauma Conference, and had seen a presentation there about sensory bears. And so we talked about using sensory bears within the session that I had with this young girl as a way to talk about her experiences away from herself. Amy had also brought in that Kim Golding's ideas about creating fairy tales as a way of child being able to understand their own story, which is not too confronting. And so I brought those ideas into the sessions with this young girl, and she promptly named her bear after her superhero Thor, and it became Thor Girl. And we used this bear to fly through the skies and rescue kittens and do all sorts of adventurous things, and then also to tell her story. At the same time, Thor Girl had a backpack in which she could keep her emotions. And so in the telling of her story, Thor Girl would carry the emotions of the child. We used little kimochis as to represent the emotions. And so this sensory bear became a vehicle for her to understand and tolerate the telling of her story. And she also began to bring the emotions that she thought the bear was feeling through the different parts of her story. And then I'll leave it over to Amy. You can pick it up from there.
Yeah, so I'll continue. Sorry.
No,
Dawn.
I was just going to say, because already, just from that, the start from one single young woman, I'm just already seeing sparks of connection to some of the work that Richard Rose does in his work, and I was just, I was hoping you were going to talk about that, Amy, like the influence of that in the development of this bear, because it just feels like so central to all of the live classrooms that Richard's been doing.
Yeah, I think that once Karen had made this bear, Thor Girl bear for this young person, I actually got a little bit jealous, and I wanted my own. So I actually, because I was the manager and I asked Karen to actually make the bear, so make sensory bears for each of the team members.
Oh wow!
And we had team building around this, and we actually spoke to each other's strengths, and we sort of made our own sensory bears. And then, because of the diploma, and this is where Richard comes in, because of the diploma, one of our colleagues and one of our co-founders, Natalia, actually said, hey, that think, feel, do thing that we were talking about in the diploma, maybe we could I actually want like a brain and a heart and hands or paws on my bear. And that's actually how it started. So the three of us combined, so the Karen making the bears, myself being a little bit jealous and also bringing that sensory aspect, and Natalia bringing the concepts from the diploma, actually made the bear. And that's how it started.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And so they're so tactile, and we're talking about the thinking, feeling and doing. How is that represented on the bears when you make them?
Well, we have, yes, it's a bear shape that is filled with rice for the weightedness, so you feel the heaviness, and then sew a little coloured brain on the top of the bear, a heart in the centre of the bear, and little paws, little coloured paws, so that when we're talking with or to the bear with the child, we can say, so this is the brain of the bear, and that's about what you're thinking about, and this is the heart of the bear, this is what the bear is feeling or what you're feeling, and so what are you feeling or at this moment, and then what are you thinking about? You reach to the brain, and then with the pause, what can you do in this situation? And so it's using those three questions and the three parts of the bear to talk through a situation.
And there's some question, sorry, Dawn, there's some question around why the bear doesn't have a face. And that's actually a really good question. A lot of children and adults more so pose that question to us. And the response we give is because if the bear is needing to voice that the child is sad, then we wouldn't want to have a smiling face. We want to make sure that the bear can represent any sort of emotion. So no face for the bear.
No face for the bear. How? And I actually, you mentioned that they're filled with rice as well. And I remember in one of the live classrooms that you were in with us, Amy, where there was a whole load of questions about what you fill the rice with. But you said it's about the weight of the bear as well for the thing, because there was, I think, they're saying, could we put sand in it? Could we put beads in it? But it's like it's the
yeah. So we definitely have tried different things. So rice is great, and we've also
River
pebbles.
Yeah, we've done river. So the fish pond pebbles are really good. It just needs to be a bit sewing reinforced, but and we've also just recently tried kinetic sand in the bears, which has been quite cool. But it is around the weight of them, and the feeling of it on your shoulder, or the feeling of it being with you.
Yes, no, I can see that. So what are you able to talk about some of the most surprising or creative ways you've seen the bears being used, either by practitioners, you've mentioned your team, or young people?
I'll probably start with the story of actually my son. And I know that sounds a little bit unusual, but Karen actually made 2 bears for my children who from their baby blanket. So the sentiment as well. So their bears are named Pinky and Rose because it was the blanket was a pink blanket.
Completely personalised then.
Yeah, completely personalised, yeah. And we were moving house, so my family was moving house, and William, who's my son, he came to me, and Pinky, the bear, had a question for me. And Pinky asked, or said actually, that they were really concerned about moving. They were really worried about moving and wanted to understand more. And so William obviously shared Pinky's voice with me, and then I spoke back to Pinky and explained what the process was, and because Pinky was quite worried that we wouldn't be able to bring any of our stuff with us, that we move house but we leave everything there. He was quite young at the time, so he was under 5, and so we had a really good conversation with Pinky, and at the end Pinky said that they were okay to move, and that it was all fine, and that if they had any other questions that they'd ask me. Aww. So that was probably quite a personal story of how the bear's voice is really useful.
Yeah, for children to find their own voices as well, but through the bears.
Yeah.
I love that they were made out of their baby blankets as well. It just adds to it, doesn't it? It in there.
Because they are made of different types of fabrics, because some people like the soft velvety feeling, some people don't like that. Some people like like a denim-y fabric, and then also when you are making them personally, which is an indulgence, but that is how they are made. You actually can select what colour. The heart might be a shiny, or it might be a fluffy, so you can build in those different sensory parts to the bear.
Yeah, and does that personalisation, does that deepen the impact of the bears when you're using them in sessions?
Well, sometimes the bears, the children become so attached to the bears that they convince us that they should hang on to them afterwards.
I can see that.
And I know Amy has comes in. Well, I'll let Amy, sorry.
Yeah, so I actually, in my work as a practitioner, TLSW practitioner, I bring a pack for the children I work with, and a bear is always part of that pack. And 2 children in particular, they adore their bears, and they actually dress them up in baby's clothes, and they've actually put them to bed in a baby's cradle. And the sense of belonging and connection to their bears is incredible. They come to each session with them, and the work that I'm doing with them is actually around adoption. So I, as part of their therapeutic life story workbook, I actually made an adoption certificate for the children to adopt their bears. So then they became an official part of their family. And that was quite, it gave me goosebumps just saying that. It was quite a special moment for those children who are so wanting to be adopted by the family that they're in, and knowing that they can adopt their bears. It was quite a special thing.
Who are bringing all those stories with the bears as well. Oh,
Yeah,
I've got
yeah.
goosebumps now.
And it's actually with our conversation, Karen, we were actually saying before when we were sort of talking about this podcast, we made a bit of a pun. It's the bears come to each of the wallpaper times and sort of hold down the wallpaper. That's one of their most functional purposes. But then we thought about it. It's actually they're bearing witness.
Yes.
And then we're like, oh my God, it's a pun of bearing witness. So the bears are bearing witness to the children's stories and for each session. So it's like really beautiful thing that the bears are always there. They're present.
Yeah, the children, as you pull out the wallpaper, they go into the bag and pull out, where's the bear? We need to use the bears, and they sit at each end.
They anchor it.
Yeah. And it is interesting because, I don't use the bears quite in the same way that Amy does. I've not really found the bear's voice so successfully, but I certainly have a number of particularly young men, sort of teenagers, who can get quite robust with the bears because they are weighted. So it's not that they quite enjoy throwing them around and punching them and twisting them and squeezing them and sometimes they're watching to see my reaction. Am I going to tell them to stop? Am I going to say, leave off? That's my precious bear. And I did have one young fella who was interacting vigorously, and it broke. And so suddenly it was shedding rice, and he, quite sheepishly, hands it back to me. Oh, sorry. And I said, that's okay, I can mend it. The bear has been, it's been hurt, and we all have hurts, and we all get various damages, and then we mend them. And I will mend this, and there'll be a little scar on this bear, and it will always remind me of you. It'll always remember you now because of this scar. And so this is the joy of, in part of therapeutic life story work, because it is about telling stories and using whatever we are doing at any time to create a story for the child we're working with. And so the bears do that too. So in this case, that is part of the story that I can create for this young boy.
Let's take a short break to hear more about our membership offer.
We want people to gain more of an understanding about what it's like to be care experienced and to have a better understanding of what it actually means.
Could creative life story work make a difference to the care experienced children and young people you work with? Maybe you're a social worker.
I think we forget at our peril that actually telling a child the story of their early life is one of the most profound uses of social work power that we could ever operate.
Perhaps you're a foster carer.
When they say it's all about the child, it's not, because our experiences, it's about the carer and the child. And it just gives a new angle to our relationship because we're learning about each other together.
A Creative Life Story Work membership will give you, or your whole team, access to resources, including activities you can use in direct work with children and young people, training with life story work experts, and lots more.
And I think a lot of our children are looking for meaning, looking for, why is it I feel this way when my friends don't? Why is it I get angry internally and my friends don't? The greatest thing we see is when we are able to say to young people, this is your story, this is about who you are. And then children towards the end say, it's not my fault that these things happened, but it is something that I can do something about. And once we have that, then we know we can move forward.
Find out about our membership for individuals and for organisations on our website, creativelifestorywork.com.
You mentioned about older children using the bear, and I wondered about if there was any differences in various age groups, whether that's younger children, adolescents, or even adults, and how they engage with the bear when you're using them.
Yeah, I can probably answer that one. I have a few stories around that. Probably the initial use of the bears was very much with the adults practitioners and using the bears in group supervision. And I brought the bears along to group supervision with my peers because I actually wanted to hold the bears, and it was rare that I actually ended up holding them. because the other adults in the room took them. And it was also allowed me to incorporate the think, feel, do into the conversation, because they were holding the bears. I was then able to say, oh, I'm wondering like what you think about that and what you're feeling around that, and like what have you done or what do you want to do within that, within like this conversation that we're having. So it was a good way for me to then bring the bears in, but also in a comfortable way, because they were holding this sensory toy, really, essentially, with them. And another story, it was actually a recent story, a mum, a carer, and their son who's in care, who's 9, he's very energetic, and he usually spends the whole of the therapeutic love story work session sort of on a wobble board, like going left to right. It sometimes makes me dizzy. And this particular time, the carer, the mum, was probably feeling a bit stressed, and I noticed that she sort of wandered away to the chairs in my therapy room, and she had 2 bears with her, and I saw her with the bears, just 2, one on each shoulder, and she was just sitting back. She was still engaged, and she was still talking with and being able to like be with her child and be with me, and was also like actually regulating herself. Yeah. And it was clear that the bears were helping. So the bears are really helpful for regulation for adults as well. Oh. Yeah.
Oh.
And I've got another story there, just not quite the same, but I also recently was working with a mum and a small boy. And this boy, he's only about 6, but he's had some major serious, or lives with major health problems. He won't live a full life. And he's got an incredible carer who is she's a paediatric nurse, and so she's very dedicated to him. And he had a medical crisis, which involved ambulances, flashing, hospital, the whole caboodle, which we then were working through in a session afterwards. We had Richard's the race course around the wallpaper, and he was recreating the journey to the hospital with all these little cars on the racetrack. But we also had the bear there, and we were talking, and it came up. His carer was talking about her reaction to this emergency, and she was saying how she just felt so overwhelmed by it all, she stopped being able to think. So her feeling was just so overwhelming that she stopped being able to think and couldn't work out what to do. And then that becomes the beginning of the conversation about the sympathetic nervous system, and how, when your limbic system is in overdrive, your front brain just switches off and you can't think properly. You don't know what to do. And so it was a way for her to sort of talk about this with her son. And so it really worked for me that time.
Thank you, Karen. And my last question, I wondered about what you hope for the future of Think, Feel, Do Bears. Are you any new developments, versions or collaborations coming?
Well, yeah. So, we have lots of plans for these bears. Probably the biggest one is the continuing of, our main goal for these bears was to help children and adults across the world have a voice. And we know that that's happening. We know that there's, from what started from a few bears with us as a team, are now thousands of bears across the world. And we know that within Australia, UNICEF uses them, and they have used them to be part of the team for when we had the big bushfires recently. The children impacted by that, part of the team were the bears, and the bears helped the children have their voice heard around what the fire's impact on them was. And we also know that there's some nanas in Cornwall who are making bears. We also know that the Country Women's Association across Australia make bears for children in care and also other children. We know that they're in the UK. We know that they're in America. We know that they're in South Africa. They're in Portugal. They're across the world, and it's amazing. And we know that partly that's to do with Richard, because he likes spreading the word of the bears. And probably what we would love to continue seeing is that the family tree of the bears continue growing. and that we all know that the uniqueness of the bears, that just as the children in care that we work with are unique and are part of families that may not look like them, the bears also join that family. They don't look the same, and they're there, and it's a beautiful thing. You know, there's so many projects, and that's the main thing. That's the main thing that we want to see, that continued family tree growing of bears for children and adults.
Karen and Amy, thank you so much for taking us behind the scenes and shining a light on your Think, Feel, Do sensory bears. I think I'll always remember the picture of them on the rolled out wallpaper, being the anchors, witnessing those stories. Gorgeous, fantastic. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dawn.
Whether you're a foster carer, someone who has experience with the care system, or you work with children and young people, we hope this episode has given you an insight into how we can make life story work better for young people and how you can use it in your own practice. You can find out more about Creative Life Story Work on our website, creativelifestorywork.com, and you can find us on LinkedIn and Blue Sky at Creative LSW. Please do get in touch though with any comments or questions, as we'd really love to hear from you. And if your podcast app allows you to, please do leave us a review, as it really helps others to find our show. So until next month, bye for now.